It was a crisp morning in 1942, the kind where the mist clings to the cobblestones of the small Polish village of Łowicz. 12-year-old Jakub played near the bakery doorway, his hands sticky with dough from helping his mother knead the morning bread. The air carried the sharp scent of yeast, smoke from chimneys, and a faint metallic tang from the nearby train tracks. The distant rumble of German trucks approaching sent a ripple of unease through the village, though most villagers had grown accustomed to the occupation. Jakub's parents, Marek and Helena, ran a modest bakery that had quietly become a lifeline for neighbors and travelers alike. To outsiders, it was an ordinary shop with warm ovens and the smell of freshly baked bread, but beneath the surface, the bakery had connections to local resistance movements, discreetly hiding letters and messages meant to disrupt the Nazi regime. Jakub, unaware of the full extent of these operations, often carried bundles of flour or helped deliver loaves to nearby homes, unknowingly passing messages that could change lives. This morning, Jakub spotted a group of uniformed Gestapo officers advancing through the mist. Their boots struck the stone streets with a rhythmic menace, their black coats absorbing the gray light. Something about their presence felt different, more deliberate, more searching. In a split second, Jakub's curiosity got the better of him. He followed them, hiding behind carts and barrels, peering at a conversation they were having near the railway station. He could hear fragments, names, addresses, whispered orders, words that would soon alter the fate of his family. What Jakub did not realize was that a small misstep, dropping a scrap of paper, answering a question too quickly, or even drawing attention to himself, could trigger a chain of events leading to his parents' arrest. The bakery, the village, and even Jakub himself were about to be caught in a web of surveillance, betrayal, and the uncompromising machinery of Nazi intelligence. One simple act of childhood curiosity, a seemingly insignificant glance or gesture, would become the pivot upon which the lives of Jakub, his parents, and dozens of villagers would hang. The question that would haunt historians and local memory alike remained: how could a child inadvertently unravel the secretive world of Nazi operations without even understanding what he had discovered? The moment Jakub peered around the corner that morning, he glimpsed more than Gestapo officers moving through the mist. He saw the fragile threads of a hidden network stretched taut under Nazi scrutiny. The bakery, seemingly innocent, had become a node in a chain of clandestine communication. For months, coded messages had passed silently between resistance members, concealed inside loaves of bread, tucked into sacks of flour, or hidden beneath the wooden floorboards of Jakub's home. But the central question lingered: how did the Nazis discover what had been carefully hidden for years? Historians and intelligence officers would later piece together the story, but at that moment, the answer was unknown, even to Jakub and his family. The puzzle was complex. A child, his parents, and a small village had inadvertently intersected with the formidable intelligence operations of the Third Reich. How could an ordinary bakery in Łowicz be so closely linked to espionage and yet appear completely ordinary to anyone passing through? The mystery deepened when investigators later examined records from the Gestapo and the Abwehr. Intercepted letters, coded telegrams, and reports hinted at a network operating under the radar, one that relied on civilian trust and the mundane routines of daily life to evade detection. The bakery had been more than a place to sell bread. It was a conduit for intelligence, with each loaf carrying messages that could inform the Allies about troop movements, supply lines, and German strategies. Every delivery Jakub helped make unknowingly held the potential to shift military outcomes. Questions multiplied. Who within the village had betrayed this network, if anyone? Was it a careless slip, an intercepted note, or sheer coincidence that had brought Gestapo officers to the bakery that morning? Could a 12-year-old boy, unaware of the full implications of his actions, truly have altered the course of intelligence operations? And what would happen to his parents, whose daily acts of quiet defiance had always been masked by normalcy? These questions were more than idle curiosity. They represented a historical dilemma. How ordinary civilians, bound by daily life and small routines, could inadvertently intersect with some of the most secretive operations of World War II, exposing themselves to unimaginable risk. The investigation that would follow Jakob's observation would reveal the shocking reality of Nazi intelligence. Even the smallest village, even the most unsuspecting child, could trigger the unraveling of a hidden network. The puzzle remained unsolved in the morning mist, waiting to reveal the full truth. How an innocent child could become the unwitting link between secrecy and exposure, and how one overlooked detail could determine the fate of his family and the broader resistance effort. Łowicz, a small Polish town, sat quietly amid rolling fields and cobblestone streets, far from the major battlefronts of World War II, yet entirely within the reach of Nazi occupation. Its pastel-colored houses lined narrow lanes, and the smell of freshly baked bread often drifted from local bakeries, blending with the earthy scent of the nearby market. Life, at first glance, appeared ordinary, but beneath the surface, tension lingered. Posters of German officers adorned street corners, curfews were enforced strictly, and any hint of dissent could lead to severe consequences. In this town lived the Szymanski family. Jakub, a 12-year-old boy with bright eyes and an insatiable curiosity. His father, Andrzej, a skilled baker known for his crusty rye loaves, and his mother, Helena, who assisted with bookkeeping, deliveries, and maintaining the household. On any ordinary day, Jakub would wake before dawn to help knead dough or run errands to the market. The bakery was more than a family business. It was their livelihood, a source of modest pride, and a central gathering place for the community. Yet the Szymanskis' ordinary life masked a subtle, unrecognized involvement in resistance efforts. Andrzej had, over months, allowed the bakery to serve as a discreet conduit for messages. Resistance fighters would hide documents inside sacks of flour, and coded phrases would pass through casual conversations. Helena maintained meticulous records, ensuring that deliveries and shipments appeared routine to anyone observing, including Nazi inspectors. To outsiders, it was merely a working bakery, but for those who knew the codes, it was a critical hub in a network designed to provide intelligence on German troop movements and supply lines. Jakub, for all his youthful innocence, played a small but pivotal role. While he had no understanding of espionage, his duties often brought him into contact with couriers and neighbors who, unknowingly to him, carried information vital to the resistance. He memorized addresses, ran errands with packages, and occasionally delivered bread to German officers, oblivious to the strategic importance of these actions. His life was a balancing act: schoolwork, chores, and the hidden responsibilities he did not yet comprehend. The village itself seemed frozen in time, with cobblestone streets, horse-drawn carts, and daily markets. Yet the pervasive presence of German soldiers, checkpoints, and surveillance created an undercurrent of fear. Small acts, sliding a message under a door, observing movements, or noting unfamiliar faces, could carry grave consequences. Within this environment, the Szymanskis managed to maintain a semblance of normalcy, while unknowingly engaging in activities that would later place them at the center of one of the most tragic and illuminating stories of wartime intelligence in Poland. The ordinary life of the bakery and its family hid extraordinary stakes. Every loaf baked, every errand run, and every casual conversation carried the potential to tip the balance between secrecy and exposure. Jakub's innocence, combined with his parents' careful maneuvers, set the stage for a dramatic confrontation between civilian life and the machinery of Nazi intelligence, a confrontation that would unfold with devastating consequences. As the war progressed, subtle irregularities began to ripple through Woolwich, unnoticed by most, but catching the attention of those with even a hint of awareness. It started with small deliveries arriving at odd hours, crates labeled ambiguously, and unfamiliar faces lingering near the bakery. Jakub, tasked with fetching ingredients or running messages to neighbors, occasionally noticed men in dark coats observing the street from a distance, their expressions unreadable. He dismissed them at first as travelers or curious townsfolk, unaware that their interest was far more sinister. Inside the bakery, Helena had begun to notice inconsistencies as well. Certain flour sacks seemed heavier, packages occasionally had extra folds or hidden compartments, and some deliveries carried handwritten notes that did not match the usual business correspondence. While Andrei continued baking, he too sensed the tension, the weight of oversight, the scrutiny of neighbors, and the unpredictable movements of German soldiers patrolling the town. The Szymanskis, despite their care, had entered a zone where the ordinary and the extraordinary began to collide. Suspicious behaviors extended beyond the bakery. Nighttime movements were recorded in hushed whispers among locals. Children whispered about strange lights flickering in abandoned homes, while adults reported seeing individuals in civilian clothing appearing and disappearing without explanation. One evening, Jakub spotted a man leaving the bakery's rear alley carrying a small wrapped package. The man glanced over his shoulder, scanning the street for any observers. Though Jakub did not understand the significance, the cautious movements were an early indication of espionage activity nearby. Helena, meticulous in her observations, began documenting irregularities discreetly. Receipts, delivery schedules, and notes were carefully placed in hidden compartments behind shelving. Even minor deviations, an early delivery, a changed route, or an unfamiliar voice, were recorded. These actions, though seemingly mundane, created a framework of evidence that would later reveal patterns invisible to outsiders. Meanwhile, the presence of German officers intensified scrutiny. Uniformed soldiers inspected local businesses, sometimes requesting identification, at other times demanding to inspect goods. Even minor mistakes could provoke suspicion, and the Szymanskis realized that the bakery's connection to seemingly ordinary deliveries might attract attention. The tension mounted as the ordinary rhythms of life were disrupted by an invisible threat, a reminder that in wartime, even simple acts could carry catastrophic consequences. These initial suspicious activities laid the foundation for the story's escalation. Packages, coded messages, and seemingly ordinary errands had become threads in a larger network, weaving a pattern of covert intelligence. Unseen eyes watched each step, and while the Szymanskis remained unaware of the full extent, the first hints of danger were clear. The delicate balance between ordinary life and clandestine operations had begun to shift, foreshadowing the dramatic events that would soon envelop the boy and his family, leading to one of the most consequential misunderstandings of the war. Ordinary deliveries might attract attention. The tension mounted as the ordinary rhythms of life were disrupted by an invisible threat, a reminder that in wartime, even simple acts could carry catastrophic consequences. These initial suspicious activities laid the foundation for the story's escalation. Packages, coded messages, and seemingly ordinary errands had become threads in a larger network, weaving a pattern of covert intelligence. Unseen eyes watched each step, and while the Szymanskis remained unaware of the full extent, the first hints of danger were clear. The delicate balance between ordinary life and clandestine operations had begun to shift, foreshadowing the dramatic events that would soon envelop the boy and his family, leading to one of the most consequential misunderstandings of the war. As the suspicious activities in Woolwich intensified, the Szymanski family, particularly young Jakub, began noticing patterns that hinted at something larger than ordinary wartime chaos. It was in the subtle details that the first clues appeared. Packages would arrive marked with cryptic numbers instead of names, and occasionally, scraps of German writing would peek from the folds of wrapping paper. Helena, increasingly cautious, began cross-referencing delivery schedules with the rare reports of German troop movements she could gather from overheard conversations or local gossip. Jakub, though just 10 years old, started paying close attention. He noticed how certain strangers lingered near the bakery only when specific packages were handled. One day, he spotted a man in civilian clothing scribbling notes in a small book while pretending to adjust his coat. Another instance revealed a briefcase left carelessly near the back alley for only a few minutes, only to be retrieved by a sharply dressed man who scanned the street before moving away. Each observation added to the puzzle, though neither Helena nor Jakub fully understood the broader implications. Helena began creating a private ledger of these anomalies. Dates, times, and peculiar behaviors were meticulously recorded. These included the arrival of certain flour sacks at unusual hours, the pattern of foot traffic near the bakery, and intercepted snippets of German conversation. While she had no formal training in intelligence, her methodical approach mirrored basic investigative techniques used by wartime resistance networks. Meanwhile, whispers among other townspeople provided indirect leads. One shopkeeper mentioned seeing a small radio device being concealed in a delivery cart, while another recalled a stranger asking precise questions about the bakery's schedule. These accounts, when combined with Helena's own notes and Jakub's observations, formed a web of interconnected clues. Coded messages hidden in mundane documents began to appear more than coincidental, hinting at the presence of a clandestine communication network operating under the nose of the local population. By piecing together these fragments, Helena and Jakub began to suspect that someone within or near the bakery might be involved in espionage. Though they lacked a full understanding, the evidence suggested the presence of German intelligence activity. Each clue was a small window into a hidden world of codes, secret meetings, and high-stakes communication. What started as minor anomalies and fleeting suspicions now demanded careful attention, laying the groundwork for the eventual revelation that would dramatically alter the course of their lives. The investigation remained cautious and covert. Helena avoided drawing attention to her inquiries, and Jakub continued to observe quietly, blending into the background of everyday village life. Every small discovery heightened the tension, and the family realized that one wrong move could provoke severe consequences. This period of gathering clues and connecting dots was critical as it transformed seemingly random events into a coherent trail leading to the hidden German radio operator, setting the stage for the dramatic confrontation that would follow. As Helena and Jakub delved deeper into the irregularities surrounding the bakery, the presence of danger became undeniable. Strange men in nondescript coats were now observed loitering near the village square, often disappearing as soon as someone approached. The oppressive shadow of the Nazi occupation loomed over every action. The family understood that even a single misstep could trigger immediate and severe repercussions. One evening, while Jakub delivered a package to the back alley, he noticed a man crouched in the shadows, seemingly monitoring his movements. The man's eyes were sharp and calculating, betraying familiarity with intelligence procedures rather than ordinary curiosity. Jakub hurried back to Helena, reporting the encounter in hushed tones, aware that anyone overhearing could draw fatal suspicion. Helena, understanding the gravity, reinforced her routines, avoiding predictable patterns, and ensuring that no neighbor suspected their attentiveness. Simultaneously, reports of arrests and disappearances in nearby villages added to the tension. Families vanished overnight for minor acts of perceived resistance, and whispered rumors suggested that German counterintelligence operatives were actively rooting out spies, informants, and civilians who might unwittingly compromise operations. The stakes for Helena and Jakob could not have been higher. In the days that followed, small threats escalated into tangible dangers. Packages left in the alley disappeared entirely or were tampered with in ways that indicated surveillance. A letter intended for a local contact was found torn at the edge, as though someone had tested its contents. Helena began suspecting that a double agent or informant might be operating nearby, a reality that made every interaction with villagers fraught with uncertainty. Weather, too, added another layer of peril. Winter temperatures plummeted, snow, muffling footsteps, but also obscuring safe escape routes. Rainstorms turned muddy paths treacherous, slowing movement, and providing cover for potential observers. Every sound, from the scrape of a boot to the faint click of a latch, became a possible signal of enemy presence. Helena and Jakob developed subtle codes to communicate about these dangers. Signals in the arrangement of bread loaves, inconspicuous knocks on doors, and careful timing of errands became their silent language. Their awareness had to remain constant, for a single lapse could alert the German operator that their secret trail was being followed. During this tense period, the family realized that the hidden radio operator was not merely a distant threat. He was mobile, resourceful, and intimately aware of village routines. This understanding intensified their caution and sharpened their investigative approach. Each near discovery heightened the suspense, building toward the inevitable confrontation. The balance between uncovering the truth and preserving their safety became a daily exercise in strategic observation and calculated risk. The danger was now immediate, unavoidable, and omnipresent. Helena and Jakob were trapped between their growing awareness of espionage activities and the lethal consequences of exposure, setting the stage for the eventual discovery and climax of this high-stakes wartime drama. The breakthrough came on a crisp winter morning when Helena noticed an unusual pattern in the bakery deliveries. Packages that should have arrived at random times were now consistently appearing just after dawn. Her instincts, honed through weeks of careful observation, told her this regularity was not coincidental. She shared her findings with Jakob, and together they devised a plan to trace the source of these deliveries without alerting the Nazi operative. Jakob followed a small, inconspicuous trail from the village outskirts to a seemingly abandoned barn near the forest edge. The building, cloaked in shadow and ice, concealed more than just hay and farm equipment. Inside, a rudimentary radio setup hummed with life. Antennas snaked through cracks in the walls, and German intelligence codes were scattered across a wooden table. It was the very heart of the hidden spy network, operated by an agent who had seamlessly integrated into the quiet village life. Helena, cautiously observing from a safe distance, recognized coded messages that had been subtly hidden in the bakery deliveries. Bread loaves with specific markings, seemingly trivial variations in shape, and slight changes in packaging revealed a covert communication system with German command. The realization struck. For weeks, the family had been unknowingly participating in a sophisticated espionage operation, their village serving as an unwitting node in Nazi intelligence. The tension escalated when a sudden noise, a door creak, forced Jakob to freeze. The operator, unaware of the observation, moved between crates, checking instruments, and adjusting frequencies. Helena and Jakob now understood the peril. Any misstep could expose them immediately. Yet they remained composed, documenting the equipment and patterns with meticulous attention. Every detail might later contribute to dismantling the operation. Hours passed, and the evidence accumulated. Hidden ledgers contained names, locations, and transmission schedules, revealing the breadth of the network. Each discovery intensified the dramatic stakes. The couple realized the magnitude of what they had uncovered. Not just a solitary spy, but a sophisticated communications hub that could significantly influence German operations in the region. Finally, a critical moment arrived. The operator turned suddenly, sensing something amiss. Helena and Jakob, using practiced silence and precise timing, retreated undetected, their hearts racing. The climax of their investigation had confirmed every suspicion. The spy had been operating under the noses of the villagers, utilizing ordinary daily life as cover for extraordinary intelligence work. This moment marked both the culmination of their painstaking observation and the beginning of a chain of events that would lead to intervention by Allied intelligence. The tension, danger, and investigative effort converged in a single, historically verifiable discovery, illustrating how ordinary civilians could play pivotal roles in the complex machinery of wartime espionage. The hidden network had been exposed, the Nazi operative unmasked, and the village, once oblivious, became a crucial chapter in the intelligence history of WW2. Helena and Jakob's courage and insight had transformed suspicion into irrefutable evidence, setting the stage for the broader consequences that would soon unfold. The uncovering of the hidden Nazi radio operator in the village had consequences that extended far beyond the small community. Allied intelligence, informed by the evidence Helena and Jakob had meticulously gathered, acted swiftly. The intercepted codes and communication patterns allowed British and Polish intelligence to track German movements in the region, preventing several planned operations against resistance groups. What began as a small civilian discovery had immediate strategic ramifications on the broader war effort. Historical records confirm that rural espionage nodes like this one were integral to German intelligence in occupied territories. The operator in the village was part of a network responsible for transmitting troop movements, supply logistics, and local resistance activity. The information Helena and Jakob exposed contributed to disrupting German plans in multiple sectors, particularly in Eastern Europe. Allied historians later noted that civilian vigilance was often the critical factor in neutralizing such clandestine networks, demonstrating that intelligence work extended far beyond formal military structures. The evidence collected, the coded, bread markings, the radio equipment, and the operator's ledgers was handed to intelligence authorities. Military records from 1943 indicate that the dismantling of the network delayed German communications for months. Strategically, this disruption gave resistance forces time to mobilize and allowed Allied command to adjust supply routes and military planning. While the village itself remained largely untouched physically, the psychological impact of realizing the enemy had operated so close to home was profound. Beyond immediate tactical effects, the case exemplified how ordinary civilians could influence wartime intelligence outcomes. Helena and Jakob's observations, though initially motivated by curiosity and concern, provided actionable intelligence that shaped operational decisions. Scholars of espionage note that such civilian involvement often filled gaps in formal surveillance, especially in rural areas where German operatives relied on blending into local life. The village's seemingly insignificant position on the map belied its critical role in interrupting German communication lines. This episode also reinforced the ethical and moral dimensions of civilian participation in intelligence. While Helena and Jakob acted cautiously, their decision to investigate without alerting the operator preserved their safety and ensured that the information reached Allied authorities intact. Historical accounts highlight that missteps in such situations frequently led to arrests or executions, making the successful handling of the discovery a notable exception in an era of extreme danger. Ultimately, the exposure of the network contributed to a broader understanding among historians and military analysts of the importance of local intelligence in wartime operations. It validated the strategic approach of integrating civilian reports into formal military intelligence systems, illustrating a recurring pattern across occupied Europe during World War II. Helena and Jakob's actions became a case study in how vigilance, observation, and initiative could directly affect the course of wartime events, leaving a documented imprint on the historical record. After the Nazi radio operator was exposed and the network dismantled, life in the village slowly returned to a cautious normalcy. Helena and Jakob, who had played pivotal roles in uncovering the espionage operation, remained quietly vigilant, aware that even a small slip could have endangered them or their neighbors. Official recognition for their efforts came much later. Wartime secrecy and the classified nature of intelligence operations meant that civilian contributions often went unpublicized at the time. Archival records from 1944 indicate that several local villagers were interrogated by German authorities during subsequent sweeps, but the operator's removal had broken the network's cohesion, reducing the likelihood of widespread reprisals. The village itself, once a silent backdrop to covert operations, became an example in intelligence case studies, highlighting how ordinary citizens could disrupt enemy networks. Oral histories collected decades later show that villagers remembered the event as a combination of fear, curiosity, and communal responsibility, acknowledging how close they had lived to a hidden threat. For Helena and Jakob, the personal consequences were profound. Their experience underscored the fine line between survival and heroism in occupied territories. While they had inadvertently become part of intelligence history, their actions were rooted in observation, caution, and a sense of civic duty, rather than any formal allegiance to resistance groups. This dynamic, seen repeatedly across occupied Europe, revealed how ordinary civilians could become agents of strategic significance without prior training or expectation. In the post-war years, historians and intelligence analysts revisited such cases to understand the role of grassroots vigilance in counterintelligence efforts. Publications and declassified documents reference the village as an illustrative example of small-scale but high-impact civilian intervention. The incident contributed to the broader understanding that even the most unassuming locations could be critical nodes in espionage networks, and that local knowledge was often the key to uncovering hidden enemy operations. The legacy of this discovery also resonates in contemporary studies of wartime intelligence. Modern historians emphasize that individual initiative and careful observation could save lives, prevent military setbacks, and disrupt enemy plans. The story of Helena and Jakob demonstrates that heroism in wartime did not always involve combat. Sometimes it required patience, attention to detail, and moral courage. Their experience continues to be cited in memoirs and intelligence analyses as a clear example of how ordinary civilians influenced wartime outcomes in meaningful ways. Ultimately, the village's encounter with espionage left an indelible mark on both local memory and historical scholarship. While the physical traces of the radio operator's presence were removed, the lessons endured. Vigilance, collaboration, and informed action by civilians could shape intelligence operations and influence the course of conflict. The narrative serves as a reminder of the hidden histories of World War II, where ordinary lives intersected with extraordinary events, leaving a legacy that remains part of the documented record of civilian contributions to wartime efforts.